right now, right here. How is this?
Spectacular.
All right, but nevertheless, we are at the boat show in Düsseldorf. And let me check, this camera looks awfully... No, we're good. Boat show Düsseldorf, and we meet so many people. We meet Fiona. Fiona, first, right now, right here, how is this?
Spectacular. I love this event. You know, it's fun because you get to see friends, you know, that you only get to see a few times throughout the year, and everybody gets to come together. You get to share the latest that you've been up to, the new equipment that you're going to be riding, that you rode last year and riding the next year. And yeah, you get to play on the water, you get to go surfing, you get to go paddle some race boards. So it's perfect.
Very nice, very cool. And yeah, as you said, you get to catch up with people. We barely had the opportunity to catch up at Hood River. Yeah. So busy there, of course. You're the local gal there. A lot of people here right now are celebrating their 10th anniversary.
You included?
Me included, yeah. March 2010, I put my first post up online, and I think it was a post about how to properly carry a board and put it in the water and stand up on it. A lot of things have changed. How did you spend the last month or the last years? How did you experience the whole progression of the sport?
It started with just a passion for being on the water. It started with my excitement for going out and wanting to have fun when it wasn't windy, and being able to still go on the water because I was a windsurfer, and sitting waiting for the wind to come up, I wanted to do something else as well. And then it grew into racing, and it grew into stand-up surfing, and then it very quickly grew into competition, and the competition were going well, and it just became fun. I liked training, I really enjoy it. I like that challenge, and if you would have asked me, like, I had a dream to go and compete, and to be able to go to Europe and race for stand-up paddling. That was something that I really, really wanted to do. And so if you had asked me when I was 14, when I was learning how to paddle, if I would do it, I'd be like, oh, maybe one day I could go race one time in Europe. Yeah. And now most of my year is spent in Europe racing, and I get to travel all over the world. It really is a dream come true. Right. And I would have had no idea, where it was going to go, but it's just really cool to see what happens when you follow your passion.
And I think you just sparked a little thought in me when you said you come to Europe a lot, and you just mentioned how we had so many people in Aussie at the Glagla race. Yeah. We see certain pockets in the world where participation rates are declining, and we see other pockets in the world where the participation rate is rising. And Europe, without a doubt, is on the rise. You're a Hood River local, a place where stand-up paddling was adopted really, really fast.
Yeah.
Where do you see the participation rates shifting, and what do you think it might be the reason behind it?
Well, I think you're exactly right. There are some, I wouldn't actually say it's necessarily participation rates are dropping, but I think trends are shifting. Like you can see here in Europe, inflatables are so popular because you can go anywhere. You can throw it in a smaller vehicle and, take your board wherever you go. And people see stand-up paddling as, part of it is pumping up an inflatable to go out there on the water, which is really cool, whereas that's different than in the States. But what I see overall, all over the world, is that people are excited for the experience in paddling, and people want to be out there with a lot of other people. So like the event in Paris, where you had 900 paddlers in the water. Yeah,
crazy, a lot of people, yeah.
Amazing, and everybody was having fun. And when you get more and more people together, it's just like that excitement grows and builds. And same thing with Glagla. I mean, there's 650 people showing up to a race in January in the winter, it's cold.
Yeah, I know. It's not summer and tropical. It's bloody ass cold.
Exactly. So it's and I think that is the direction that the sport is shifting to. Like you're always going to have, the elite racers that are, training super hard and focusing, and we want to see that growing too. And that is still there. But I see this section of the sport swelling where it's like excitement, inflatables, adventure, that kind of different way to go out there and experience the water. And that is what actually really inspires me, because you see more people getting into the sport for the experience, for the adventure, for the excitement of just going out in the water and having a good time.
So bottom line, maybe you can say if it gets too elite, maybe then you're kind of like rationalizing the common paddler like me out of the picture, and that would be a danger for participation rates. Is that kind of like the undertone here, or what do you think?
No, actually, I think that the sport could be as elite as you want it to be, but there's different sections of the sport. You don't have to put everybody who has an inflatable into an elite category. What I'm saying is that the elite is only getting more and more competitive, and it's difficult, but also the cool thing about it is it's so welcoming. So anybody that wants to work their way up through the rankings can definitely do that. But on the other hand, there's this new part of the sport that's growing with excitement, and that is just getting out there with your friends and your family and trying to do some sort of challenge in a way that maybe you wouldn't have done otherwise. And so I think that, in the big picture, both, all aspects of the sport, it doesn't have to exist one without the other. It can very much be both.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying, and of course that leads a little bit to the dissection of the sport. We have the broad base, we have the elite. We're gonna have to, since I don't see you all that much, we'll brush on the topic real quick. This past year, I feel after 10 years, as far as the organization of the sport goes and the actual figuring out who's a world champion, and I had this podcast with Chris the other day. We were talking about it. I counted 22 world champions. He counted 23. Bottom line is, what do you think? What's going to have to be done here? What as an athlete? What do you envision? That definitely holding one of those world titles.
Yeah, I mean, I won one of them. I won one of them this last year as well.
Right.
And it's incredible to have, a world title as a professional athlete. I've won 2 world titles now. But that being said, I understand that there needs to be some
reconciliation.
Yeah, exactly. It's confusing because when you take that presentation to a sponsor, a potential somebody who is potentially looking to invest in this sport, and say there's 25 of us sitting on a panel and we all raise our hands that we won a world title this year, they're going to look at us and be like, wow, that's confusing. But
Thanks for saying that. Thank you so much. Once, it's not me saying it. Thank you so much.
But at the same time, I understand that there are different parts of the sport. I think it is really good, say in the racing side of thing, it's good to acknowledge the people who are better at sprint racing and the people who are better at the distance racing.
Without a doubt.
You don't have a 200-meter runner going and doing a marathon.
And 100%. And we also want to acknowledge the fact that, yes, it is absolutely legitimate to have a one-time world championship that is at this date, at this place. Everybody gets to prepare the same. And we have a second world title that is an overall tour. We see this in many different sports. Yeah. So I think that is absolutely legitimate, but not 3 different organizations, 2 of them, some federal organization and a private one, and then who else wants to participate? Because soon enough, if I'm going to win a bunch of millions, I'm just going to proclaim the Stand Up Magazin World Championship, and there's nobody that's going to say to me, well, you can't really do that, because nobody really owns a right to it.
No, I think it's true, and it is confusing. And it gets tricky. There are a lot of sports that have events that are, World Cup events where you have your, one weekend of competing where that's a World Cup. Whereas there's people who are going to be competing in a World Cup and then are also competing in a World Tour. And I think that maybe if we were to change a little bit the dynamic and the thought around those single events to more of a World Cup event, that could also potentially help a little bit.
Yeah.
The hard part is, as an athlete, I feel that my job is to go out there and compete at the best level.
Yes.
Pretty much on all the different platforms that I have there. Mm-hmm. If that equates to a world title, for me that is a good thing. But I think it also is important that the sport holds itself to a certain standards, because the more world titles that we have to be counted over so many different things makes it confusing for not only the athletes but also for the viewers. So going forward, I think we're on the same thought that it would be nice to be able to have things just a little bit more clear. But it was really nice this year to have a tour that acknowledged both sides of within racing, because this is the first year the APP acknowledged sprints and distance as well as overall. It gets more confusing, but at least there was a little bit of differentiation there.
I agree with that. I mean, yes, there is definitely sprint/technical race, there's a long distance, and there's a surfing. That is fully fine with me. I don't think we're going to have to dissect this further into board length. I think we definitely have one board length is enough, and we have 3 disciplines, and that's all good. And we can have a one-time championship, and we can have a tour along with this, and that. But what we don't need 3 different organizations that does that. It's like in surfing. We have a pretty much a clear WSL tour. That's the tour, and we have an ISA that has an ISA World Surfing Championship where everybody can participate. Not just the elite that gets into as a qualification. So we just basically would have to replicate that. And surfing is also longboarding as well. And so it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science, but I also think that there are a lot of different people that are in the sport of stand-up paddling, and we are still such a young sport, which is a really cool thing.
Even after 10 years, which is true.
Even
if it feels long, for God, not years, yes, it's so true.
So it's even though we kind of get frustrated with this and that where it's happening, if you think of where stand-up paddling was a few years ago, I think that obviously the caliber of the athletes and what people are doing in the sport and pushing, and the way that they're earning world titles, beyond however many world titles is, that's the progression that we need to look at, and that's what we need to acknowledge and see that it is really cool to see where the sport is and to have a little bit of patience. Yes, let's work towards a more uniform sport, but I think where we're at, we're doing pretty good.
You're right. People think wow, 10 years already, so much has happened, but 10 years is actually, in the grand scheme of things, really not that much. And thanks for pointing that out, because it kind of brings things a little bit back to reality. If you're thinking about how long surfing's been around, and it's or how long it took for snowboarding to get into the Olympics. So good point.
Everybody's freaking out that we're not in the Olympics yet, and it's there are sports that have been around for 150 years that are still getting Olympics. And I think that for us to be able to go stand-up paddling anywhere in the world that we want to be able to, on any weekend of the year, you can find multiple events to go to. That is so cool.
Totally
and for not
true.
being around for very long, it's spectacular. So I think we need to keep that in mind. Of course, we need to keep working towards more of what the sport wants as a whole. But even if we break it down, we're doing good.
And I can't think of a better closing statement than this. So thank you so much. You're going to have 50,000 interviews to give, and I'll be running around with my camera here because it's so busy here, and this weekend is going to be a lot of action. Thank you so much, Fiona.
Thank you very
Aloha.
much.
All right.